Figures today's show, we're all getting poorer again, and we're led by the most incompetent Chancellor in history, Rachel Reeves, and there are some very big questions. She said she worked for 10 years at the Bank of England, turns out it was 5.5. Said she was an economist at the Bank of England, turns out she was in customer service. And on expenses, well, she had very big problems when she worked for a bank, and as a Member of Parliament, had a credit card taken.
Nigel Farage is facing a political scandal, with Rachel Reeves, who claimed to have worked at the Bank of England for a decade, being caught out. The scandal revealed that she only worked for 512 years, highlighting the importance of honesty in handling the country's finances.
No. Well, I'm an economist. I studied economics. I got a master's in economics from the London School of Economics, and I worked as an economist at the Bank of England.
That's one. Let's have Reeves on her CV.
Why did you say that you'd worked at the Bank of England for a decade when in fact it was, well, it wasn't even 6 years, it was 5? I mean, that's exaggeration, isn't it?
Well, I worked at the Bank of England for 6 years, between 2000 and 2006. I was employed by the Bank of England, including I spent just over a year at the British Embassy working in the economics section there, supporting the government and the bank.
Why did you say it was a decade?
Well, I think it's one interview. I worked at the Bank of England for 6 years. I worked for then at Halifax Bank of Scotland, I think for 3 years after that. I became an MP when I was 31. But I think in the end, people want to judge me on the job that I'm doing today as Chancellor of the Exchequer. I'm qualified to do this job. But in the end, people are going to judge me. Am I growing the economy? Am I improving their living standards? And I'm determined to do just that.
Farage has been accused of making misleading statements and has already had her parliamentary credit card taken away for unpaid expenses. She is trying to convince the public that the UK economy is growing based on a 0.1% increase. Farage is not buying this, and many people are not. With pressure mounting and trust in politicians at rock bottom, this could be the moment that defines her career. Farage is not letting this one slide and is not letting the cracks widen.
This is something the Chancellor of the Exchequer definitely does not want you to know, which is why I'm going to share it with you. Yet again, Rachel Reeves is under fire because it appears there's a serious discrepancy in her CV, and not for the first time. This time, it appears she exaggerated how much time she spent as an economist at the Bank of England. The Chancellor's office has blamed it on an administrative error by her officials. Here's the thing which is even more disturbing. We now know by an investigation at the BBC, of all places, that when she was at HBOS, she was investigated over a fiddle in her expenses to the tune of thousands of pounds. The Treasury say she didn't know anything about the investigation, but a whistleblower knows all about it and has shared it with the BBC. So I'm asking you this. Is the Chancellor of the Exchequer being straight with the public? Is she lying to us? And if she is lying to us, what else is she lying about? I'll tell you what she's lying about, in my view. The state of the economy. It's tanking, growth flatlining, interest rates edging up, business confidence collapsing. Our first woman Chancellor, and she's proving to be a complete disaster who may not be honest.
Nigel Farage is criticizing Rachel Reeves for bending the truth about her career, claiming she spent nearly a decade at the Bank of England. However, official records show she only worked there for 5.5 years, almost half the time she claimed. Farage argues that this is another example of dishonesty in politics, as it affects credibility and the credibility of leaders in charge of economic decisions. He believes that if Reeves can't be honest about her past, it's difficult for anyone to trust her statements about the country's future. Farage's argument is simple. If Reeves can't be honest about her past, how can anyone trust her statements about the country's future?
The growth numbers have come in higher than many expected, but I'm still not satisfied with the level of growth that our economy is achieving, and that's why I am determined to go further and faster in delivering the economic growth and the improvements in living standards that our country deserves.
You say the growth figures are higher than expected, but your government promised Britain it would be the fastest growing country in the G7. 6 months in and we're barely just growing. Today's figures are a bit of a failure, aren't they? Especially when you consider GDP per head has gone down.
It's not possible to turn around more than a decades of poor economic performance in just a few months. But we are doing what is necessary to bring stability back to the economy, reforming the economy, the planning system, regulation and pensions, to encourage investment in our economy, which is the lifeblood of a successful economy.
In 2015, MP Reeves was stripped of her parliamentary credit card after accumulating over $4,000 in unpaid expenses. This highlights the fact that politicians responsible for economic policies cannot even manage their own spending. Parliament gives MPs credit cards for work-rated expenses, not for running up bills. Not only Reeves, but also other MPs also faced similar issues. Farage questioned how someone with such a record could be trusted to manage the economy, as financial responsibility starts with personal accountability. This raises questions about trust, honesty, and the overall standards politicians are held. 2. If an ordinary person lied on a job application or failed to pay off their debts, they would face serious consequences.
About growth, of course, there isn't any growth at all at the moment, and many would say that actually the national insurance rises, new employment legislation, the upping of the minimum wage pretty much guarantees that when the 1st of April comes and much of this kicks in, that we're really going to be in a tough spot. But no, the Chancellor has been off to Davos and come back anew.
Rachel Reeves, the UK Prime Minister, has been under fire for claiming that the UK economy is on the upswing. However, her numbers show a 0.1% growth rate, which is not growth but stagnation. Nigel Farage, a political commentator, criticized Reeves for celebrating this small increase when people are struggling with rising costs, wages that don't keep up with inflation, and businesses facing higher taxes. Farage argued that this is due to poor economic management, government overreach, and policies that squeeze businesses and working-class families instead of helping them. Reeves's claims of progress are criticized by Farage, who sees it as a sign of a political class disconnected from reality. Farage believes that government leaders are getting salary raises while the public is told to wait for slow economic recovery. This is a slap in the face to people who are seeing their energy bills rise, their groceries cost more, and their paychecks stretch thinner each month. Farage's actions are damaging to the UK's economy and the public's ability to address these concerns.
We've got growth, it's brilliant, everything is going just swimmingly, everything's fine. Is that right?
They're very ropey numbers, very low by historic standards. Fourth quarter GDP numbers. Well, GDP numbers are always subject to revision. These are preliminary numbers, fourth quarter numbers in particular. Yes, Rachel Reeves has just about avoided steering Britain into a recession within the first 6 months of Labour taking office for the first time in 14 years, but only by the skin of her teeth.
Farage argues that real leadership involves setting an example and not rewarding failure. With a 0.1% growth, politicians seem to be getting richer while others are being told to be patient. This feeds into growing resentment towards MPs and ministers who seem more focused on looking after themselves than fixing the problems they were elected to solve. Farage knows how to tap into public frustration, but with weak economic figures, Reeves's credibility is getting bigger. If she doesn't have a real plan to fix the economy, she might run out of excuses quickly.
No, listen.
You say the growth figures are higher than expected, but your government promised Britain it would be the fastest growing country in the G7.
It did.
6 months in and we're barely just growing. Today's figures are a bit of a fake.
Let's have it right. The only growth that we've seen is the MP pay rises. A lovely 2.8% pay increase, which will probably take them to around £100,000. Add their allowances and their expenses on top, they'll be earning staggering amounts of money. Basically getting a pay increase for failing. Are they not failing? Are they excelling? Not in my eyes, they're not. 0.1%.
Nigel Farage is accusing Rachel Reeves of misleading the public about her time at the Bank of England, her suspended parliamentary credit card, and her attempts to spin a 0.1% economic growth as progress. Farage believes this is just political spin, and if the pattern continues, it raises serious questions about whether Reeves is deliberately twisting facts to shape her image. Credibility is crucial for politicians, and if the public can't trust politicians to be honest about their careers, they may not trust them to run a country. Reeves has positioned herself as the person to fix the UK economy, but people are now questioning her truthfulness about the past.
Future.
Of pounds. Treasury say she didn't know anything about the investigation, but a whistleblower knows all about it and has shared it with the BBC. So I'm asking you this. Is the chance of the Exchequer being straight with the public? Is she lying to us? And if she is lying to us, what else is she lying about? I'll tell you what she's lying about, in my view. The state of the economy. It's tanking, growth flatlining, interest rates edging up, business confidence collapsing. Our first woman chancellor, and she's proven to be a complete disaster who may not be honest either.
The UK's economy is under pressure due to the credibility of Rachel Reeves, who has been accused of bending the truth. Critics argue that Reeves' reputation is damaged and her credibility is being questioned. They are demanding accountability and transparency from her, as her reputation could be damaged permanently. The controversies surrounding her political future are already raging, and the stakes are high. The trust in politicians is at an all-time low, and the scandal could hurt not only Reeves, but the labor movement as a whole. The stakes are high, and the damage to Reeves's reputation could be permanent.
Higher.
Heath, it's worth saying two main points. One was made by Richard Tice earlier. In GDP per head terms, income per head, we are in recession. We've seen income per head fall now for 2 successive quarters. The third and fourth quarter of 2024, so we're in recession. The other thing in that sense, the other thing I'd say, Julia, is within these numbers, the headline number is just about okay enough to allow Rachel Reeves to try and reset the narrative.
Rachel Reeves is facing credibility questions due to her exaggerated time at the Bank of England and her evasion of responsibility for past financial mishaps. Her claims of economic growth and the disconnect between MP salaries and public struggles exacerbate the situation. The trust in leadership is at stake, and while Reeves may try to move past this, the bigger question remains: can politicians be held accountable, or will this be forgotten?